Hello friends, I wanted to share with you this week while we're learning about controversial literature, a little bit about the Dick and Jane books. One reason I'm kind of curious about the history of the Dick and Jane books is because I was researching some graphic design on how to illustrate a blog that my sister and I were thinking of doing, and we felt that we were really drawn toward these retro style artwork where the little kids are in cute little dresses and overall boys and white socks with those black shoes. And so we were having to look up retro wallpaper and retro cartoony illustrations, and it kept coming back to the Dick and Jane style illustration. You can actually buy pages from the vintage books on Etsy or different websites because people who grew up learning how to read with the Dick and Jane books in schools have a really nostalgic attachment to the illustrations, not necessarily the stories, but they felt like a reader and they learned to read on these books with these books, and they just really love the pictures. So a lot of people like to buy framed art from the original books. If you've never read them, it's very famous for a certain phrase, "See Spot Run." That's an example of one of the early books. It's an Addison Wesley education publishing company that owns the rights of the Dick and Jane books. It was books that were put out with Basel readers in the 70s, and it was very phonics based, so they would have limited number of words and kids would learn the words, like the word see, and then you would see the word over and over in the text, and so they could practice their word identification or their sight words. So See Spot Run was in most of the books because their dog was named Spot. The reason why it's controversial, though, is because many people criticized the people who analyzed books for quality, like librarians and booksellers. They would not be happy with these books because they didn't think it represented true family life. People talked in these books not like a normal family would talk, and it was definitely not diverse with cultures. So you would rarely see anyone of different ethnicities. In 1965, that was the year that the public schools mandated desegregation, and so the Dick and Jane books developed an African American family that moved next door, and they had some children who they would play with, but they didn't put it on the book covers that year or for a few years until the general public could get used to the idea. So they did incorporate some diversity just with African American children, but other than that, people felt like it just didn't represent the true American family. Another reason why it was controversial is because the family life that was depicted in the stories, some people felt like it was very stereotypical. So the father would go off to work in the morning with the briefcase, and he would return home just in time for a hot dinner. And the mother would dress up to go to the grocery store or wear pearls while she was vacuuming, things like that. And so there became a lot of controversy around the books and what it was teaching children about what a family is. If this is a topic that interests you, you can get a book called Growing Up with Dick and Jane, Learning and Living the American Dream by Carolyn Kismarick and Marvin Hefferman, published in 1996. And in there, they take a look at why the American schools purchased these books so much, and they provided some historical events and looked at it from a few different ways. And one of the reasons why it was so popular during the years that it was popular was because some of the cultural things that were happening. There was some political unrest. There was the breakdown of the nuclear family in the 60s. There was the baby boom. And if you talk to baby boomers, the generation of people, they have very fond memories of the Dick and Jane books, usually, unless they were a teacher, and then they might not feel so happy about it. But generally, the people's response is a happy one. In the stories, Dick is the all-American boy, and he's the role model for his younger sister Jane, and Jane is supposed to be a typical American girl, pretty, bright, responsible, sometimes getting into mischief, and her brother protects her. There's some mischief that the two get into. They have some pets. Spot is their Cocker Spaniel. They have a cat named Little Mew. Then they have some friends that come to visit, and their mother is very pretty and graceful and a homemaker, and their father is gentle and patient and soft-spoken. They have a grandma and grandpa who visit from the farm. And like I said before, the language is very predictable in the text, and so they make the illustrations very colorful, very bright, and always with a certain tone, a positive kind of happy tone that they depict in their pictures. They wanted to portray family life a certain way. Because of that, there's a lot of criticism toward it, that it's just not true, it's not real, it's not genuine. Many people didn't like the repetitious language. They didn't like the goody-goody behavior of the children. They didn't like how parent roles were depicted, and a lot of people did not like the ethnic issues or lack of that were in the books. However, if you talk to children who learned how to read with these books, they usually have a very fond memory of them. So you might not know that these are books that they went out of print for a while, and then just for nostalgic sake, they have been starting to be published again. And the difference now with the new printing of the books are that they take greater care to make the text bigger, add a little bit more variety, but not much. It could be considered a decodable book. And the family portrayals are definitely different. So now in the newly published book, I bought one just for nostalgic sake. I wouldn't use it, as my favorite book ever, but I like that they've made some changes. So now they'll have some of the historically accurate things that you might remember, like playing dress up with your mom, but now they'll have the way different families look, and I especially like the way that they've portrayed the mom and the dad. So the dads in the books now are not just heading off to work and then they come home at the end of the day. Sometimes the dads are doing the cooking or the cleaning or the gardening, like this picture. I also like that now the girls can wear pants, and sometimes the boys are dirty and not perfect, and sometimes it shows the mom just reading a book while dad's cooking dinner. So I like the changes that it's made. Here's a little bit, if you want to read it you can pause, but a little bit of the history. Oh, here's a picture of some of the changing roles of the dad. So if you're interested in remember these books, or if you have a child who's learning how to read, they might find that these are a fun purchase. These are the newly printed ones, and I'm not sure I'd highly recommend it as the best book ever, but it's definitely one that has stirred some controversy over the years. Thanks. Bye-bye.